Hi, folks. This is Mr. Wallace, your driver education instructor, and we are in lesson number one. So this is actually session three, but it can be for any session. So I'm going to go right to the present mode, and here we go: the Highway Transportation System and Graduated Driver License Law. So, purpose of the Highway Transportation System, or HTS. The purpose of the HTS is to move goods and people as efficiently and economically and safely as possible from one place to another. Efforts are continually being made to improve the environment of the HTS and the vehicles that are on the HTS and the users of the HTS. And we're going to be discussing how is it that we improve. Okay, so where were we? Where are we now? And where are we going? What makes up the HTS, the Highway Transportation System? Well, first is roadways, right? Then the vehicles that use the roadways and the rest of the road users. That could be bicyclists, it could be truck drivers, school bus user or drivers, people who use buses, for example. And right here, you can see all the interstate highways that go through the United States. And definitely take a look at especially the Northeast, especially this region, the Northeast, all the way into like the Chicago area. It's very, very, we have quite a few of them. And it's because this is where really the most populous part of the United States really kind of resides, right in this part of the world, of our country. Here we go. Let's continue. So we do have a learning activity. Name some of the different kinds of roadways that we travel on. Then list the environments that these roadways are in. So, in fact, what I really want to emphasize are environments because that's how we are dividing up our driving lessons. Okay. Name some of the different vehicles that use the highway transportation system and name some of the different users of the highway transportation system. Okay. So, different environments. We have a couple right here. We have a bridge environment. Here we have a suburban residential neighborhood environment. Here we have like a highway or an expressway environment. And here we have an urban environment, right? Like a commercial road or an intermediate road. Some of the different vehicles that we can even see here, we have, a lot of cars and truck or SUVs here in this picture. Again, same kind of here. I think I see a bus here, maybe. This is definitely a vehicle that in here maybe are used for commercial purposes, right? Looks like you're some type of truck for some kind of commercial purpose. Here we don't see any at all. And then on the bridge, we see a couple cars. But anything, right? Could be buses, could be garbage trucks, for example. And some of the different users of the highway transportation system, well, not only do we have individuals who use it for transportation, we also have people who ride their bicycles on it. For example, we have people who use roads for walking. For example, skateboarding. These are all users as well as people who use it for commercial reasons. Or driving buses, for example. Okay, let's continue. What makes up the highway transportation system? Well, we have roadways, first of all, as we talked about. So there are 3.9 million miles of roadway, of which 3 million miles are rural roads. Isn't that interesting? The interstate system accounts for only 1.2% of the total mileage, but it carries around 23.8% of the travel volume. Interesting, isn't it? I was just on I-95 for the last couple of days, and there was quite a lot of volume on I-95. Vehicles. So what makes up the highway transportation system? Vehicles. There are 272 million vehicles on U.S. roads. And of course, roadway users, there are 225 million licensed drivers. And that's in addition to those using public transport or cyclists or pedestrians. So we really are a country dependent on a strong highway transportation system. Okay. And this all started back in the, especially with cars, when we think about, what we had to do when cars started using the road back in the early 1900s. There wasn't so much of a need for high standards or standardized uh, travel like there is nowadays. Can you imagine what our road system would look like if it wasn't standardized? It'd be nearly impossible for us to travel anywhere. As more and more cars enter the roadways, we needed to standardize, right? Standardization of traffic controls and laws, signs, the type of the road conditions needed to be standardized and the width and so on. So construction of limited access roads like highways started, and it really has transformed this nation, right? And we were really the first in the game. There wasn't another country or really another continent that really devoted itself to highway transportation like North America. So the highway transportation vehicle improvements also, right? So we saw what they looked like back in the early 1900s. Uh, those type of vehicles could never be allowed on to be sold nowadays in the roads. We have such high standards when it comes to vehicle safety and the safety devices that we require cars, to have here in the United States when they're sold. And these systems have improved over time, and definitely they've reduced risk of injury and death for sure. And some of these devices and systems, you can think about some of the ones that are in your own car, right? What are the ones that are in your car that definitely were not in that car that we saw from the early 1900s? I'm sure you can think of several of them, right? We can think of seat belts. We can think of airbags. We can think of different systems that allow us to see what's behind our car. Maybe they even warn us if something's moving behind our vehicle. Some systems tell us if something is along the side in our blind spots. So we have anti-lock brakes. I mean, the list goes on and on and on of how we've improved vehicles over time. So, and improvement for users, right? Before, there was really no standardized means of people who, you wanted to use a car, you could just go get yourself a car and start driving around. And, it's probably similar to what you might see in boats nowadays, right? I think New York State might even have some type of law governing the age of which you can use a boat, but I bet you in some other states you can use any boat at any age you like. There's no law, regulating it, right? So nowadays there's all types of regulations for car users, right? So there's licensing procedures, there's an introduction of graduated licensing system or law. That's what we are currently involving ourselves in with this course, right? There's specialized class licenses, right? So your junior license, you get your permit, you get your full license, or a motorcycle license or a commercial driver's license. There's the development of driver safety programs that all started in the 1950s. By the way, this program that we're doing right now today, this is a driver safety program. Okay. There's stricter legislation regarding driving behaviors, right? Like there's speed limits and so on, and there's certain stuff that you do as a violation of the law now, the regulations, and you could lose your driver's license if you don't follow those laws. So the highway transportation regulations, there are federal regulations, there are state regulations, there are local government agencies, and they all work together to regulate the highway traffic transportation system, the highway transportation system, right? So for example, The National Highway Safety Act sets guidelines about vehicle registration and driver licensing and traffic laws and traffic courts and highway construction and maintenance. And then you have state statutes, those are laws that are informed by those guidelines. And then the laws are enforced at the state and local levels by law enforcement agencies, right? Like your local police. And one of the things that is so important to understand is that driving is based on trust. The trust that we know the rules of the road and that we will follow the rules of the road. Okay. So you trust that you can predict the actions of others. You trust that other people can predict what you will do, and you trust that knowing the rules of the road, that it allows you to best predict the actions of others. By the way, you are the most important part of the highway transportation system. Okay, so you cannot control many things like the weather or breakdowns in the highway transportation system. You can't control the conditions of other drivers, you can't control their actions, and you can't control the conditions of other vehicles. However, you can control your actions and your reaction to situations presented in the highway transportation system. Okay? You are the most important part of the highway transportation system because you can control you. Okay? So when it comes to driver safety, there are many different elements that come into play for driver safety, and they all have their special, unique, and important role in creating a safe environment for us to travel and to transport ourselves or transport other stuff or other people. So there's the physical fitness aspect of driver safety. There's skills that you need to learn. There's habits that you need to acquire. Your attitude will totally affect how safe you are on the road. Okay? Your emotional fitness plays a vital role, especially when it comes to reacting to things. Your knowledge of the rules of the road is vital. Okay? And your mental fitness is vital too. If you are lethargic and tired, it's not going to work out well, right? These all have a very, very important role to play in your safety and the safety of everyone else on the road. Okay, so what does it mean to be physically fit to drive? Right? Think about that for a minute. So one of the things that we can think about is we need to, at the very least, be able to see well, right, in order to drive. You need to be able to see. In fact, 90% of driving is visual. Okay, we take in everything with our eyes. Almost 90% of our input is visual. Okay, so if we don't have, if we're not physically fit, like visually, we can't drive safely. What does it mean to be emotionally fit to drive? Think about that one for a minute. Who might not be emotionally fit to drive? So, someone emotionally fit to drive is someone who is not going to uh, allow his or her emotions to strongly affect the way that that person drives, right? So either really, really good or really, really bad, the person's not going to, it's not going to change the way they drive, not going to change the way they react to situations on the road. Okay. Can you be emotionally and physically fit to drive sometimes and not others? What do you think about that? When might be a time when you are not physically fit to drive? When might be a time when you are not emotionally fit to drive? Well, I hope none of you engage in underage drinking, but if you do, that would clearly be a case when someone is not physically fit to drive, right? So Another situation when someone might not be emotionally fit to drive. What if they've had, some really traumatic experience? Something happened, and uh, they can't really focus themselves, right? And we can think of a variety of situations like that. Some of them are pretty common. They happen to us in our lives. So there are times when we may not be emotionally fit to drive or even physically fit to drive. But it's important to recognize that and to not get behind the wheel. How about driver's attitude? How does driver's attitude affect driving? What are some skills a person must have to drive safely? How do habits affect driving? So, how does a driver's attitude affect driving? Well, attitude really is going to play one of those vital roles. And we saw it in that arc of driver safety. If having an attitude, a healthy defensive attitude on behind the wheel is at some point or another either going to save your life or save someone else's life on the road. I guarantee it. It's that important. Okay. So having a good, healthy attitude of not breaking rules, following rules, uh, doing what you're supposed to be doing behind the wheel and avoiding doing things that you're not supposed to be doing behind the wheel is attitude. And good attitude will save someone's life. Bad attitudes may very well put your life or someone else's life in jeopardy. And it's that important. And we'll talk about situations where me, Mr. Wallace, when I was your age, didn't always have a good attitude or a healthy attitude behind the wheel. And I want to share some of those experiences with you later on in the course so that you don't do the same thing I did. What are some skills a person must have to drive safely? We need a variety of skills, don't we? I mean, we can't turn unless if you don't know how to turn, then we're not going to be able to drive safely, right? Not going to if you don't know how to change lanes properly, we're not going to be able to drive safely. Okay, if we don't know how to follow someone, the following distance behind another vehicle, then we're not going to be able to drive safely. And how do habits affect driving, right? So what kind of habits, uh, and this is a good one to ask you in this class. Have you noticed any bad habits that your parents have picked up over time? Some may, and I only want to tell you what they are or give you any hints, but this is a good time to think if you've noticed any bad habits that your parents use. Those are the ones that kind of stand out. I'm sure there's hundreds of good habits that they use. Okay, the responsibilities of driving, ensuring vehicle is in good condition, right? These are all your responsibilities. Knowledge of the rules and regulations for operating a motor vehicle, absolutely. Anticipating the actions of others using proper visual skills, right? And we're going to talk about all these different types of visual skills that we need to use, right? And anticipating, predicting is going to be incredibly important for us, especially as defensive drivers. Managing space around your vehicle and properly adjusting and adapting to try to maintain. So you're going to be monitoring, managing, trying to maintain the space around your vehicle to give you a better opportunity to drive defensively and safely. Okay, the responsibilities of driving continue. So you have to have respect for the other road users, the highway traffic and the highway transportation system, right? Driver and passenger protection, seatbelts, headlights, passive and active restraints are there, and it's your responsibility to use them. Now we have laws that require them in cars and require you to use them. So it's your responsibility to be physically and mentally fit to drive, to get behind the wheel. And it's your responsibility to avoid getting behind the wheel if you are not physically or mentally fit at that moment. So it is your responsibility to dedicate yourself to improving and increasing and improving your driving skills. Okay. Okay, there are definitely risks of driving. Okay, this is probably, as we will hear a former police officer say later on in the course, this is the most risky task that you will ever, for most of us, ever do, is getting in the car and driving someplace. Okay, it's incredibly risky compared to just about anything else you do. Okay, what is risk? Okay. Risk is the chance of injury or death or property damage to you or someone else, right? And risk definitely is always present when you drive. Okay. And there are ways to reduce risk. And that's what this course is a lot about. How do we assess risk? Okay. A lot of what we do in this class is also assessing the risk, right? Anticipating and evaluating the actions and conditions of other users of the highway transportation system, the environment, right? And the conditions and designs of the roads. Okay. So when we talk about the environment, we're talking about, for example, a residential neighborhood or a commercial urban area, right? Risk changes in these different environments. Okay. How do we manage risk? By making adjustments in steering, braking, and speed, avoiding distractions and impairments. We can also avoid risk. Here's another one. The time of day that you go driving is one way we manage risk, right? I think we've realized by now that driving at night is more risky than driving during the day, right? Driving at rush hour is more risky than driving, I don't know, during the middle of the day or, early morning when there's very few people on the roads. What about also weather conditions? It definitely is more risky driving in bad weather conditions. These are all ways that we manage risk. Okay, sources of risk in the highway transportation system. Well, there's driver contributed risks, right? For example, inexperience, distraction, fatigue, impairment, right? Then there's vehicle contributed, like a broken tail light, could be bald tires, could be your headlight out. And there's also roadway contributed risks, like heavy traffic, potholes, traffic light not functioning, for example. Okay, and right here, I'm going to take my stop, and that's going to be the end of part 1.